Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Hey man, I'm telling you guys, man. Like you can't compare to my dancing skills, man. Don't even like, you know, what is it called? Don't even challenge me, man. Because I mean, come on, man, come on. I'm in a whole class of my own, probably at the bottom. Anyway, welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you guys for coming by very much. So I did go back and you know, I recognized. I was thinking about one of my French subscribers, you know, a day or two ago. And I thought, man, you know, I haven't did Maxime Vachier-Lagrave in a while. So I figured I'd go back to the SuperUnited Blitz that they played in Zagreb, Croatia. And so I do have a Maxime Vachier-Lagrave versus Wesley. So of course, always, for my people that are coming from the Philippines, I will say mabuhay to you. Kamusta na aking makaibigan. Hello ulit. Mabuting pagbati ingat lagi to you guys. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. As always, anybody who is coming from France or who does speak French, I would say bonjour, bienvenue. Ça me fait plaisir de te voir. If this is my, you know, multiple times seeing you, merci beaucoup, mes amis, ma meilleure pour toi. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. But yeah, if you guys are ready to go, let's see what we got for this game. All right, so we got the move c4. So we start with the English opening. We got knight to f6, we got knight to f3, e6, g3, d5, and bishop to g2. And I think you guys might kind of be seeing what I'm seeing right here. We are getting into a transposition period. All we need is a few moves, and we have kind of transposed. Interestingly enough, the reason I grabbed this game specifically, actually, and this is taken out of round 8. I didn't mention that, but yeah, this is the round 8 game. You guys saw it in the thumbnail. But anyways, all we need is a few moves, and we have literally transposed into the game that one of the games that I did yesterday from the Chess Olympiad. So we do see those moves. Bishop comes to e7. We got castles by white, castles by black, d4, and then pawn takes c4. And we have actually transposed into the exact same position, and we do have the Catalan, the open Catalan right here. So you guys that watched my video yesterday, all 130, 40 of you, whatever, you guys would know that this was the exact position that we got into yesterday, and we followed kind of the same lines, but then we branch off at a certain point. We do see queen to c2. Like I said, at this level, I mean, you're going to rarely see knight to e5, but you're going to mostly see queen to c2. We do have the move a6. We got a4. So following the same lines as we followed before, we do have bishop to d7. And instead of going a rook to d1 like we saw in the other game, Maxime decides that he's going to go ahead and grab on c4. So, I mean, the game is still kind of, you know, similar, but we do see that maneuver bishop to c6 that must be kind of like it's not a pet for Wesley So, but he does probably use it quite a few times. We do see, get that on. Okay. We do see the move bishop to f4. We got bishop over to d6, and you kind of have, you know, an important point in the game. I mean, do you trade here? The problem is trading here is usually going to activate the queen. So you're kind of helping black a little bit. So we're like, hey man, we're going to try to make it hard for you. So bishop goes to g5. We see knight b to d7, and then we do see knight to c3. And I mean, both sides have literally done pretty much what they need to do. You know, I will say white is just slightly ahead, just a hair, if you can see, just a hair. But you know, white does have their queen out, so they are kind of like one step or tempo ahead of black here, but nothing to write home about. We do see the move h6, bishop takes f6, knight takes f6, and then we do see the novelty of the game, which is super duper surprising, and it is the move e3. Like I always tell you guys when these Catalans show up on the board, one of the most vulnerable pawns is going to be this pawn on e2. So usually you either have to push it and try to improve the position, as of course now you cannot push e4, you know, trying to threaten something like that. But you would see like maybe a queen to c2 or a rook over to e1, or, you know, a pawn push some kind of way to just, you know, kind of rid yourself of, you know, that whole situation. But like I said, we do see the move e3. We got the move a5. We got knight down to e1. And then bishop takes g2, king takes g2, and we do have the move c6. So everything is like completely solid for both sides. Like nobody's dropping tactics, nobody's dropping pieces. We're looking good. So the knight does decide to come back to f3. We got queen down to e7. We got rook f to d1, rook f to d8, rook a to c1, and then we do see rook a to c8. And Not always, but, you know, quite a few times when you see these Catalans played, you're going to see the rooks in these positions. And it is because usually the position gets pretty open on the C and D files. A lot of the times you might have like a D5 and a C5 situation, and then you have a lot of pawns traded. And, I mean, you know, these rooks can do a lot on these open files. And, you know, this is not necessarily where you want your queen, you know, opposite a rook, right? So we do see the queen noticing that and saying, bro, I'm going to step to the side a touch. So the queen does go to B3. We see bishop down to B4. We got knight to E5. And you guessed it. I know you guys are thinking about it, man. When is C5 going to come? Right now. I'm with you guys on that one. C5 comes now. As you guys know, you know, black only has one pawn in the center and these other pawns right here. So, you know, we got to kind of break that down just a little bit. So the knight does come up to B5. We got pawn taking D4, a rook taking C8. We see rook taking C8, and then a rook does take on D4. We got a rook over to D8. So Wesley was like, bro, we could just kind of trade stuff down. So Maxime says, hey, we're going to trade on my terms. So the queen does come over to C4. We see rook taking D4, and then queen taking D4. And something that was actually interesting of a variation in this particular situation is instead of just trading immediately, it was actually going knight to D3. And one of the things that black kind of has to think about in this position is the fact that their bishop in this particular situation is a little bit loose, and it can become even more loose. So if you do see rook taking D4, knight could be taking D4. And even though this isn't completely won, I mean, this knight can possibly show up down here, and that's a lot of fire on this bishop. And then the queen can come up, stuff. Excuse me, stuff like that. So, you know, you got to be kind of careful, but that's not what we saw in the game. Like I said, we did see rook takes, queen takes. We got bishop up to C5, and it's like, my poor queen. Like, why are you picking up my queen, man? Like, just leave it alone, bro. Queen goes down to D3. We see B6, and then we do have the move E4. And we have reached a very interesting point in the game. It doesn't seem like there's really kind of anything going on too crazy because the bar is like even, but if you do want to pause the video and see what move Wesley So has that he can play in the position to get extra super sharp, go ahead and do so. All right. So for those of you that watch like all of my videos or most of my videos, something that rings in your ears probably all the time is like, man, he always says this, is the F7 and the F2 pawns, right? So with that in mind, does Wesley So have a way that he can attack a pawn in this position? And most importantly, the F2 pawn. And it is actually bishop takes F2. Some of you guys probably are like wondering at this particular moment, like, why would I just throw the bishop away next to the king? Well, the thing about it is, if the king captures on F2, which is something you really can't do, queen comes to C5, and you have now just won this knight. And you have won a pawn. So you're up a pawn, and the game is much easier for you. So if you did guess the move, bishop takes F2, it is absolutely not suggested that the king take back. It is suggested that you play an in-between knight to D6 move, but at the end of the day, you are down a pawn. So it can get kind of iffy for you. Just be a little bit harder for you to play. But like I said, after we saw the move E4, Wesley So did not go into that line. He probably felt like it was kind of too drawish, so I'm gonna go ahead and just not go into that. So we did see the move G5. We got the move F3. You know, just trying to make sure we super restrict this knight from going anywhere. After the king comes to G7, we see knight down to C4, and then we have black basically saying, I want to break all of that up. You played F3, so my knight can't get into here, but I want my knight to get in there anyway. So we do see pawn taking G4, knight taking G4, and then we do have the move E5. And this kind of gives, you know, black just a little bit, right? And so what we see in this position is queen over to B7. We do see queen over to F3 blocking. I mean, you just kind of have everything kind of going on over here. You definitely didn't want to go king to F1 because the queen was going to show up here and you were going to cry a river for forever. So queen does take F3 with check. The king takes F3, and then the knight takes H2 with check. And black has won a pawn. So they have a really, you know, it's not like they have a completely winning position, but they definitely have the initiative. So the king does step up to F4. We got H5. We see the king up to G5. You know, these pawns are frozen over here. And interestingly enough, these pawns are frozen over here too. So even though black definitely is kind of in the driver's seat, you know, white definitely kind of has some things going for them in the position. Knight goes down to f1. We say, hey, man, we're going to have to part with that pawn. The king takes on h5. We see knight taking g3 with check. King goes back down to g4. And, I mean, at the end of the day, Wesley So is in a position where he just has an extra pawn. So, in these types of games, when you have two minor pieces against two minor pieces, it's not like it's completely won. Usually, those games are a little bit more even. But, I mean, black is definitely in the driver's seat. And, you know, we're going to see if he can kind of push that forward to a win. So, we do see the move knight to e2. We got knight up to a7. We got knight down to c1. We got knight up to c8, and we have just maneuvered our knight to try to take advantage of this. But Wesley So says, bro, if you move and take a piece, I'm going to move and take a piece. So we do see the move knight to d3. And after we see trades here like this, you are going to be taking here, and you are going to be tying that knight down to the protection of this pawn too. So it is not so advantageous for you. But, you know, white can definitely go wrong in this position. And they picked the correct move. King down to f3. You know, when you guys get into end games, you guys always know that the kings are very powerful pieces. And, I mean, they are definitely need to be used. With the queens off the board, it is much safer for you to maneuver your kings around. But just don't get into like a checkmate box, right? Don't get into a checkmate net, right? But the kings are very attacking pieces when you get into the end game. So all these king maneuvers and stuff like that, you know, some pretty advanced high-level stuff. Let me see. It's been a long time since my camera got, you know, kind of blurry. Come on, son. It's still kind of blurry, I think. Maybe that's. Let me try that. Okay, I think it cleared up. Okay, that's better. Okay, yeah, we're good. Okay, so the king goes down to g6. The king goes up to e4. We got knight down to f2 with check. King goes to f4. So we got a little bit of maneuvering going on, attacking different points in the position. You know. We are definitely, you know, not wanting this knight to move. So, you know, some of it when you're coming down to playing like with minor pieces, you're trying to tie that minor piece down to the protection of something so that you can restrict the movement of your opponent. And that is what both players are trying to do here. They're trying to place threats. They're trying to tie their opponents down. If you can tie your opponent down enough, your opponent pretty much can't move, and it's going to be in a Zugzwang, right? So we do see the move b3. We got bishop back to c5, and it is now that we take this pawn off the board. Knight 8 takes b6. We got knight to d3 with check. We see the king sliding over to e1. We see knight down to c1, and it's not really possible to hold this pawn anymore. The knight goes back to d7. You see the bishop down to b4 because, of course, our bishop was attacked. We don't want to just lose it for free. The knight goes back to b8. We see knight taking b3. And we have just maintained the lead that we have with pawns. But we do see knight down to c6. The knight goes up to c5 with check. The king goes over to f4. And even though it seems like now we're up a crazy amount of pawns with knight takes a4, we do have a knight 6 taking a5. And you don't really want to trade down in this position if you're black, because as you know, with the pawns locked, and if it's possible that these pawns are going to get lost at some point, you do still need a knight and a bishop. So, because that's the only way you could checkmate a king by itself. So the knight does come to c5. We see knight to c6. We got the bishop down to c3. We got the knight up to d6, bishop down to b2. So it's all about like maneuvering and trying to put your opponent in a, like I said, a Zugzwang position. For those of you that aren't aware of a Zugzwang, it's basically when you put your opponent in a position to where every move they make is going to hurt their position. And you really kind of just want to pass the move. But of course, you know, you can't do that in chess. So we do see knight to e7 with check. We got the king up to g7. We got the knight back down to c6. We got bishop to c1 with check. King slides over to g4. We got the knight up to d7, tying the knight down again. But we do have another knight, so we're, you know, we don't have to tie both of the knights down. So knight to c4, knight to c5, knight to d6. Bishop comes to e3. We got knight to c4. The bishop goes down to g1. The knight comes back up to d6. The bishop goes to h2. You know. It kind of might seem weird that we're abandoning this pawn with this move knight to d8 because you're like, dude, you just left the pawn alone. But, I mean, you are targeting this pawn right here, so it's all gravy. The bishop takes on e5, and then we do see knight 6 taking f7. The bishop comes back to f6 because, like I said, you do not want to lose that bishop because you are going to have to put a lot of faith in this pawn right here. And with this king in the position that it is, it's going to be kind of hard to get that. So the knight does come to e6 with check. The knight takes on e6. We got the knight down to d6. And it is Not quite yet. We do see the knight down to d6. We got the bishop coming back to e7. Now, you're kind of stuck in this position a little bit, though. Because, I mean, you can always move, like, way far away with the bishop and stuff like that. But one of the things that you have to try to understand about the bishop and knight against a lone king checkmate is that, number one, it's crazy, crazy, impossibly hard. It is not impossible to do, but it takes a minimum of 33 moves. And that's best case scenario. So it is one of the most complicated checkmates in the history of the game of chess. And the problem that black has in this particular position is that they do not want to lose their bishop, because if they lose their bishop, they lose all checkmating chances. Because as you guys know, you cannot checkmate with a knight and a king versus a king. It's just impossible. And so you have to try to keep the bishop on. But the problem is the checkmate itself requires... for, you know, you to basically waste moves periodically throughout the process of doing this checkmate to force the king in that Zugzwang I was talking to you about. And the problem is, as long as white has this knight right here, not only do they have the ability to just check the opponent, but they have unlimited reserve tempi. So they basically, if they need to waste a move somewhere, they can always just move their knight somewhere. And in situations where the king would have to get forced over because they got to make an only move or something, like especially going over here and having to go over here like this or something like that, you don't have to make those only moves. You can just literally make a knight move anywhere, and you'll never get in the position to get checkmated. For those of you that are aware of how to do the bishop and knight versus king checkmate, you know, that is the reason why if anybody has any pieces that they can make moves with, it's pretty much going to be impossible to do. So the bishop does come back to e7. We got knight to f5 with check. And I mean, I feel like Wesley so just kind of says, hey, man, like, I get it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to be able to checkmate you if you got the knight. So I might as well just go ahead and give my bishop up, whatever. It's all going to be a draw anyway. The king goes down to f6. The knight takes on e7. And then the king takes on e7. And as I said to you guys before, you absolutely cannot checkmate a lone king with a king and a knight. And you actually can't even force it with the king and two knights versus the king. Unless the king literally puts himself in the corner and basically checkmates himself. But it is not possible to force it, though. So that's the key. So yeah, I appreciate you guys very much. Maraming salamat aking makaibigan. Merci beaucoup, mes amis. And I'll see you guys next time.